Hello, beautiful beings. Welcome to Let's Create the Revolution Together. My name is Marigold, and I'm your host on this human journey that we're all here to experience. I've created this podcast because I wanted to show the world how vibrant and fulfilling life can actually be when we're creating our reality from alignment. Want to know how to get there? Well, you just got to stay tuned because every Wednesday we're going to meet new people that are shifting their reality to create a ripple effect of transformation. We're all here to evolve, and I think that every experience we encounter is an opportunity to grow. That's why I specialize in helping people bringing more awareness into their lives so they can actually transform their experience, small and or big, into learnings. So I say, let's create that revolution together, one experience at a time. Hello, beautiful beings. Today on Let's Create the Revolution Together, we're having a talk with Alicia Marie. Maybe you remember her from a previous episode we did together. And if you haven't seen it yet, I invite you to go check it out because it was such an empowering story that she told us. Alicia is a divine feminine fairy, a self love hype woman, and a wellness and movement specialist. The last time she was here, we talked about alcoholism and how spirituality can help us overcome those kind of addiction. Today, we're going to go on a different tangent together. We're going to talk about sex, but not just basic sex like positions and stuff like that. We're actually going to go real deep into sacred sexuality, sacral energy, and sexual trauma. As you may know, our sacral chakra is where our creativity lies. And to activate that specific chakra is crucial when it's time for us to actually transform stuff, shift our reality, create something better. So that chakra is actually very important in the subject matter here in this podcast to create a revolution. So I'm very, very excited about this episode. So grab yourself something to drink, make yourself comfortable, and let's create that revolution together with Alicia Marie. Hey, girl.
Hey, hey, how are
I'm
you?
so glad you. I'm glad you're here for a second episode. We had so much fun the first time, and I'm very excited. This is gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So let's go back to like your credential, your background, because as I said, you're a hype woman, you're super fun, you're like into movement, and also there's something else in your background that makes you be so potent in talking about sexuality and sexual trauma. So
Yeah, I've had a passion for sexual trauma for as long as I can remember. And in 2010, I went through a training in the Pacific Northwest for 50 hours, specifically for sexual assault
mm,
victims, sexual assault survivors, sitting in with them during rape kits, sitting in with them to create protection orders, sitting in with them as they describe the horrors of exactly what they just experienced minutes ago. I have had over 5,000 hours of training. So, and not only did I take the time to do 50 hours of training in the Pacific Northwest, I did it also here where I'm located in Las Vegas. So that situation was even more of a deep dive. And as you go through these trainings, you understand and learn about what the law says about sex crimes and says about victims of sexual assault, and learning and understanding all aspects of what the hidden beliefs are helps you to be more of service to the
mm,
survivors of sexual assault. So I have over 5,000 hours of volunteer time with women, men, and children who've been molested or sexually assaulted. I've sat in with women who are going through a rape kit, which is where they put their feet up and they don't do a fun exam right after they had just been sexually traumatized. It's very, very painful for them to experience. And so naturally they need, what's called an advocate there. Most of the time there's a lot of shame wrapped around those traumatic situations. And so those people do not want to call family. They do not want to call anybody they know. They don't want
Mm.
to tell anybody what's going on just yet because there is so much shame around what just happened. And quite honestly, I've experienced these survivors and immediately blaming themselves. You know, this is really the only crime in the
Mm.
history of all the crimes that blame the victim.
Mm.
Someone can come in and rob somebody, and the first question people aren't they're not asking, how come you left your door unlocked?
Right.
Why did you let that robber in?
Yeah.
How come you didn't protect yourself more? Why were you wearing that so the guy could rob you?
Hmm.
Um, this is, you know, this these it sounds crazy when you speak about it, you know, if someone's kind of trying to come into your home and rob you.
Right.
About sexual assault and sexual trauma, there are so many sensitivities around this particular subject that we have as a society have done a really good job at covering up over and over and over. And in this massive suppression process, you've created this huge dark cloud where people don't even understand the divine truth of the matter in their sacred sexuality. It
Right.
is absolutely crazy to me. You know, I've worked firsthand with a family where their children had been molested, and these two people were shunned by their family instead of helping to investigate because someone in the family had done it. So rather than
Yeah.
taking ownership and responsibility that the perpetrator should definitely take, it's a cover up process. It becomes a massive cover up process instead of allowing the 3 and 4 year old children to express their voice in what happened. Because 3 and 4 year old children don't know terms that adults do, they don't make them up at
Yeah.
all. They, anytime a young child says something out of the ordinary or becomes hypersexual, you can almost guarantee they were exposed in some way. And sexual trauma, we have to define it,
Yes, we
right?
do.
Because it's kind of out there and people aren't understanding the mass umbrella it falls under. If you have experienced the projections of your weird uncle staring at you when you were a 12-year-old little girl, that's sexual assault. Okay. If you are 3 and 4 years old and you're walking around and your family member whips out his genitals without your permission, that's sexual assault. You know, like there are so many different facets that fall under this umbrella,
Yeah.
and we discredit them. Oh, they're just being them. Oh, I was just being a family member. I'm just taking a bath with them. Oh, like very minimalized. And
Yeah.
in order for us to really tap into our true creativity, which is our sacral chakra, we have
Yeah.
to understand as human beings how we can individually heal ourselves with the divine presence so we can activate true, authentic creativity, right? Creating this
Yeah.
podcast. You creating this podcast, you're tapping into your sacral chakra creativity. You're not just what we were talking about before, grabbing a paintbrush and painting on a canvas. Not
Yes.
discrediting art in any capacity, but creativity goes so deep within our body if
Yeah.
our sacral chakra is clear. If there is in our energetic field a safe open vessel for us to be able to communicate to ourselves, that way we can produce the
Yeah.
mission that's before us, not what we're told, right? The mission
Yeah.
that we're meant to do. And so it kind of begs the question, like, wow, this is a lot, you know?
Yeah. But I love like before when we were speaking, you were talking about how sexual assault is anything that you didn't consent to. Anything.
Anything. Any
Anything.
sexual action that you didn't consent to. Someone sending you a dick pic without your permission, sexual assault. Some female sending a naked picture to a man, sexual assault. You need consent and you need permission. You're exposing sexuality as a whole, and on the most deep, intimate levels, you're creating trauma
Yeah.
without even realizing it. Because again, as society, like I just take a selfie and like, oh, like, you know, like not thinking
Yeah.
about what's going to happen on the other end of the phone.
Right.
um Sexual trauma could be the 10-year-old boy that's just hanging out with his dad, and his dad thinks it's cool to show him porn. That's
Mm.
sexual assault. You're
Yeah.
exposing that soul to this degraded sense of sexuality that
Yeah.
creates questions in the mind that go against divine order.
Yes. Yes. We too often define sexual assault as rape or like something very
Right. Those are
big,
extreme
you
cases.
know, that happened. And you're like, well, that wasn't a sexual assault. Like you said, it was just like casual, like he was just changing. And like we can excuse those acts very quickly, very easily, because
I
we
literally, from personal experience, I have had, when I'm walking into a situation and I think I'm going to hang out with a friend, I've walked in and that friend thought I was coming over for something else, and I walked in and they were completely naked. That's sexual assault. I didn't ask for that. You're
right.
it's pressure. You're adding pressure, like, oh, I'm naked, so she's gonna have to say yes.
Yeah.
That is sexual assault.
Yes.
You're right. It is extreme cases. It is extreme to be raped. It is
Right.
extreme to be molested. But there's so many different other facets of sexual trauma that we have just minimized as a society that don't count
Yeah, it's like this. It's the
because
subtle
logical.
disrespect
Yes.
that we're encountering always as women. Like I've been through that so many times. Those little moments. Like my uncle is putting ice down my shirt just to see my nipple getting hard, and then talking about it in front of me with another uncle. And it's just you feel trapped, you feel like it's supposed to be normal, I guess, like it's just like, and it's really hard to own up to your power as a child. Like those moments are incredibly traumatizing, but you don't realize it and you cannot own up to it because it's like in the culture. And like if you say it, like you said, like your voice is not going to be heard. Like my mother was raped by one of her uncles, and to this day, like we're talking about like 50 years ago, and to this day we still cannot talk about this in my family.
Wow. See? I mean, it's
Yeah.
incredible. It's incredible the amount of silence
Yeah.
that comes around to save face. We need to stop saving face. There was like incest in my dad's side of the family. No one talks about that, but I'm going to be on this podcast talking about it.
Yes, exactly.
We're not like, an incest is a whole other psychological form of assault. Like, this is my
Yes.
family. I own them. I should be
Yes.
able to do whatever I want kind of
Right.
mentality. Another form of sexual assault is being recorded without your permission.
Mm,
A lot of women experience it at the gym. They'll just be
right.
working out while someone in the corner is recording them without their permission. They're assaulting that woman knowingly. They didn't ask her permission,
Yes.
right? But and it all comes back to addictions, because of their own
Yes.
addiction to whatever makes them feel better.
Yeah.
That person isn't thinking about the other person, right? Yeah, it goes pretty deep, man.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. I love how you circle back with addiction because I feel like those two are so much related together. Like when you're acting in that way, it's like in the same mindset than you stealing something to sell it to have more money to get more drugs, or to prioritize buying your six pack instead of like paying for your kids' clothes, like those kind of things that you do like for yourself, even though it's not really like good for you or good for the other.
Yeah, and that's one thing that is very hard for society to accept as a whole, that person enacting that act is more than likely dealing with an addiction that has gotten out of control.
Yes.
And I think that's why there are more pedophiles and secret people that are enacting those acts because number one, they're not called to the carpet. And
Yeah.
number two, there is no safe place for them to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I don't want to do this anymore, but I can't stop.
Yeah.
Um, but what does society do? If you're a pedophile, we want to cut everything off. We want to kill you. And that's not loving either. You know, if we're
No.
going to try to be a loving society, we got to ask the human who was assaulted, are you okay? And validate their experience as a whole to help them heal and begin to understand how this situation came about. And
Yes.
also the person enacting the act that's dealing with the addiction. Yo, guy who can't stop touching little boys. He likely was touched as a child and has never dealt with it and has constantly suppressed it. So he's just acting out of a trauma that just doesn't look like other people's. So
Yes.
it's just like anything else and any other addiction. We have to be willing to admit to our innermost selves. We have to be willing to express ourselves honestly in our full authentic emotion, because I guarantee you half these people that are doing the terrible things that they're doing to children, if they became willing, which most of them aren't, but if they became willing to speak about it, it would begin to lose its power and they wouldn't do that act anymore.
Yes.
That is what would happen. But
That is
because
true.
rapists are like put down also, all that whole entire spectrum, that's why rape keeps happening. That's why we've minimized the uncle that's dropping the ice down the shirt so they can see my 12-year-old nipples. That's why we've minimized that, because
Yeah.
we're not allowing that uncle to be like, to be called out, right? Yo, what the fuck are you doing? Why did you do that? Oh, you're trying to look at this child's nipples. Did you really think about what you're doing? Like
Right?
someone being honest with them and calling them to the carpet. And also them being like, yeah, I don't really know why I did that. Like they would have to answer honestly, or they wouldn't do it to that person again. Right. So it's
Yeah.
about also stepping up to the plate and speaking up against it, because again, sexuality as a whole has become so suppressed,
Yes.
so oppressed. That's why I believe you have all these sick things that are on porn and people get off to all this weird shit now, because in the darkness, it grows.
Yeah.
In the darkness, energetically, it's just going to grow and morph into whatever the fuck it's going to grow and morph into, because no
Yeah.
light is being shown on it. Nothing is being spoken up against it. We're just using it as a money maker, thanks to porn,
Mm-hmm.
right? Pornhub's making millions of dollars every single
Yeah.
day.
That's for
They don't
sure.
care where the content's coming from. Now, if these people actually cared, they would ask the right questions and they could begin to shut something like this down. But because everybody acts on their own fears, right? I'm sure the people who are higher up in Pornhub don't really want to lose the money that they're making.
Yeah.
They don't want to
Yeah.
sacrifice that money. They don't care how it's coming in. To think about them losing the money is their own fear.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to understand
Yeah.
that sex brings about so more than just sex. More, it's like guilt and shame and power and money and guilt and shame and power and money and cycle, cycle, cycle that has gotten so big. This
Yeah.
massive beast that now what it's going to take is each of us doing our own individual work with the divine, or whatever you call the creator of your own understanding,
Mm-hmm.
according to your
Yeah.
own experience, not
Yes.
because of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If we become willing to work with this divine being, this divine creator of all things, this being will show us how we don't participate in that beast, how we can heal our own emotional wounds, our own emotional and sexual traumas individually, bit by bit. Because at this point, that is the only thing that's going to keep shutting it down.
Yeah.
It is
And
so.
like by bringing some light, like as you speak, I have so many example that comes to my mind. I used to work in sex shop, all right, in Montreal. I was working in two sex shop at the same time. And so I was like surrounded by sex all the time. And some of the people that were coming into the shop, they came into the shop as a sexual act itself, right? And so me like being there like this young 20 something, working in that space, and it was so fun, and I learned so much because you can also play with sexuality. Like it can be fun when there's no shame and we can explore stuff. But then when this guy is coming into the shop asking me to help him with um wearing some boots, some, like we used to call them, fuck me boots, like those really high, leathery
Oh yeah.
plastic boots laced up, and asking me to put them on him as he's getting hard. And me like being like, I need to sell those things,
Under
right?
unnecessary pressure. Yeah. That you
Yes,
didn't.
I need to
You're
sell.
just
This is
working
my
on
job.
yourself,
The
dude.
more I sell, yeah, the more I sell, the more money I have. So I need to sell you those fucking boots.
Right.
And so like,
But
so
again, right? So there is a really good point. I have to sell these boots because my commission depends on it. So there's the money wheel in the sex code.
yes, exactly. And
Regardless of, you were working there, you should be able to work wherever you want without anything like that happening. However,
yes,
by taking ownership of your part you played, right? Not
yeah,
saying working in a sex shop is bad, but in that circumstance, you were thinking about the money that you could make and you were willing
yeah,
to minimize your experience for the wheel.
yes,
Or
exactly.
and
That's
this is
yes,
how deep sex goes for people. They're willing to sacrifice
yes,
anything and everything. And it's very easy for women to do. OnlyFans, going like being, I was a stripper. I
yeah,
can say this, dude. I was an exotic dancer and I sacrificed myself so I could make a lot of money and use my body to do so.
yeah,
Not discrediting the career if that's what you feel like your career is meant to be. For me, I was acting out of trauma. For me, I was thinking that that was love. For me, I
mm,
was thinking that that was power. For me, I was thinking I was helping these men in some way. It's just the stories we tell ourselves, and it's not just the stories, it's the state of denial we're willing to justify to stay
yes,
in rather than seeking what the truth of the matter actually is, like in all actuality. And when you break it down logically, we're going to go even deeper here.
yes.
Okay. I
Let's
made
do
a graph. If people are watching this on YouTube, they can see. If you can't, I'm going to try to describe it. So this is a circle. All right. And down the center of it is much like the yin and yang.
yes,
Okay. So this huge entity is the divine, right? Made up of half masculine, half feminine traits. All right. So the divine of all things, the divine entity, not saying there's not other entities. I'm just saying there's one divine entity that created all the other ones. And it's split up into two halves, right? A masculine and feminine.
mm-hmm.
And God in his and her beautiful creativity generated sexual connection between themselves so they could create, so the divine mother could have children too. Okay?
Yeah,
So because they love so deeply with one another, they created these children. But the task of the children is to learn what this unconditional love that this entity shares, right? It's our lesson. So the divine mother in her beautifulness created all these little souls. And if you're listening and not watching, there's little circles with little baby yin and yang line in between with
yeah,
masculine and feminine traits. So there's all these little souls that we get to be, right? That we're created to be. And we don't remember this, right? The divine mother's like, look, I want lots of kids and I want them all to learn love, but I'm going to give them the most authentic path to do so. I'm going
mm.
to give them the gift of not remembering. And I want to see what they're going to do with it and give them the true opportunity to learn unconditional love. Because if we already know, That's kind of a leg up, and we're not really learning, right?
Mm-mm-mm.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like when you're going and taking a test, the teacher doesn't give us the cheat sheet, right? At all. We don't get no cheat sheet. So the same exact thing happened with Divine Mother, and right, and the Divine Father. So then all these little pieces, they break off into their own little streams. Okay, masculine and feminine, right? Then they break off. So now we have someone who, like, lives over here, and then someone who just lives over here. Let's say someone gets incarnated into Europe, someone gets incarnated into the United States.
Right.
The entirety of life is finding the other half to your soul. And we have sexual drive that is meant to call in our divine counterpart. The problem with all of this is just divine truth, right? This is just a very, very high level explanation of where our souls come from and how they get incarnated on the earth. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as I'm experiencing my life over here and the other half of my soul is over there, they are always working in energetic unison to come into alignment with one another. And depending on where we are in our lessons of unconditional love is dependent upon if they're able to come into union or find each other or whatever the case may be. The problem is that society tells us that we need to date. The problem is, instead of feeling in our heart space and be guided to where we need to go, as a society, what happens? We're born into school, which is created to help minimize our emotional intelligence, and then so on and so forth. And then we're being told by our family, you have to do this, you have to do that, or you have to believe in this, you have to believe in that. And all this suppression comes all over this soul. And then what happens, dude? What happens? We're trying to go date. We're trying to go get into contact and alignment with these people, right? We feel rushed. I had a teacher tell me one time, be careful when it feels very magnetic, because that's a key to you that you're actually pulling in a trauma that you need to heal. And that's exactly what happens, especially in relationships. Let's say I meet someone, I'm like, oh my God, automatically sparks are flying, connection everywhere, da, da, da. And like, I know we've all had these relationships where it's like a 3-month honeymoon phase and everything's perfect, everything's love, blah, blah, blah. And then the shit hits the fan, and then it's not the same anymore because that addiction has worn off. That I need to subside myself in because I'm lonely. I need to find company. So I think I'm going to look at this person. They have half of what I like and half of what I don't like, but maybe they'll change into what I like. I don't know. Instead, and so we create even then this, and explain this process, because this is where more sexual trauma comes in. We're not understanding or being aware of the fact, and I can talk about this because I'm the queen. I'm a queen. I love. I love being in relationships. And I found this about myself, as humbling as it is to say. I brought myself into relationships that I didn't belong in because of my own want and desire and need to not feel lonely. And
Right.
it traumatized myself sexually over and over and over and over. I'm not discrediting anybody else that has done their acts. What I'm saying is I'm taking full ownership and responsibility for my own actions, because as I'm working with the divine, that is what happens. I got to take ownership and responsibility. I hate to tell you, people, there ain't nobody coming down to save you. Okay? God wants us to save ourselves with God. Why? If we come incarnate on the earth and forget, and we have to have this authentic experience in these all these authentic lessons, every single exercise we do is all a lesson for our soul's benefit. If that's the case, why on earth would the divine be like, all right, I'm going to send someone here, and then you don't have to take ownership and responsibility for anything?
It's free gift.
No, it's not, dude. And that's where anyway, we can go down that religious path another time. This is how deep sexual trauma goes, it as the collective, as a whole. And so we're talking about this because we need to know what we can do on our own. How can I help my own, right? And this is why I'm a movement specialist, because I love teaching about like touching your own body. The best thing I ever did for the first time ever was take a sensual embodiment course, and I cried the whole time because I had never felt what it felt like
Mm.
to touch my own body. And holding onto your stomach, grabbing your own hips, right? If you even touch yourself, what do you feel like? And I encourage anybody that's listening, put your hand on your heart, put your hand on your sacral chakra. Maybe
Yeah.
go open, close, open, close. What do you feel like if you arch your back and then contract your core? Are you feeling awkward and weird? Because that's a key that, wow, I got a lot of sexual stuff I got to deal with.
Yeah.
We got to move this kind of energy through our body. It's so deep seated. And it really helps to empower the individual to begin to understand how to help heal their sexual trauma, whether they've been victimized over and over and over again, or whether they're the person struggling with the sex addiction that they don't talk about.
Yeah.
There's there are some sex addictions out there that they're not talking about because they think it's too bad or too nasty or
Hmm.
whatever the case is. Um, and
Yeah.
that doesn't deserve to be silenced either. But we have to like remove our judgments as a collective. And the only way to do that, like for me now as I speak to you on this day, I can talk to somebody who assaulted me as a child just fine without any attachments. I feel nothing
Mm.
for them. I feel compassion, and I feel that they're sick. And I'm grateful that I've been delivered from being trapped into that hole. Also, if let's say I go around the men who gang raped me, I have been in situations because it happened in the small town I lived in, and I have been in situations where that person came around.
Mm.
I had loving women around me tell me, "You earned your spot. You're not going anywhere." And I was forced to sit in the same space as the person who had sexually traumatized me months before.
Mm.
And it was very empowering. It was scary as hell. But oh boy, did it show me like, look, whatever. You can think that you got your karma to deal with now. Dude, you're sick. I can't do anything for you. And I've had just this whole other take on sexual assault, sexual trauma, and as a whole. It's helped to free me. That is the carrot. Freedom.
Yes.
This isn't about wealth and money and all that shit that society looks for as a whole. What about the freedom to go anywhere you want, whenever you want, without worrying about where anyone else is around? Because you're divinely protected. You've been through the lessons, and for a damn fact that you earned your seat.
Yeah.
There's a whole other power that comes in that. I don't, money can't touch that.
Yeah.
You want to
And
talk about
it's tricky. It's tricky because I remember there was this moment in my life where I had this lover, and we were actually just having sex together. We weren't in a relationship, and I
Mhm.
knew I would never be in a relationship with him. And we were playing those sexual games that went a little too far at one point,
Yeah.
and where I didn't feel comfortable doing those things while we were doing them. And as I was saying no, it kept him on going like faster, deeper, into this practice that we were having at the moment. And I was trapped under him, and so I couldn't move. And so I decided in that moment to just like actually leave my body, let him finish, because I was powerless. Like he was stronger than me, and I couldn't just do anything about it at that moment. And so, well, or that's what I thought. And when he finished, I just like throw him his clothes, and I was like, "You're gone. I never want to see you again." I said, "No, you just keep on pushing. This is not the agreement. You take your stuff and you move, and I don't want to see you ever again." And so he did. He was like a little like shocked, and he didn't understand what I was saying. And I thought that by me doing this, stepping up for myself after, as well as I could in that moment, that would be enough to heal myself. And I left that town, and then I came back to that town, and somehow I kept on like seeing him, or like, just being at the fucking grocery store and he's right behind me talking about a girl with his pal, and I'm like, my heart is pounding, and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't heal that. It's not because I stepped up, it's not because I said no, it's not because I throw his clothes on him and like ask him to leave and not talking to him ever again. It was still in there. And I realized that when he was right next to me, breathing down my neck and talking about another woman. And it was like 5 years after that, right? Like, and I just, and it was like, okay, so this is not healed. And so how can we actually heal those like, I think that the first step is to acknowledge that something happened that you didn't consent to, and then what?
That's a very good question. And it is actually extremely simple, because you do have the power, right? We can go to counselors, right? Counselors are there to help break down scientifically what may have gone on. But the real juice and the real healing happens when you yourself go into a room and you close your eyes and you allow yourself, you ask the divine's help, first of all. You
Mm-hmm.
say, yo, dude, this keeps coming up. I honestly want to figure out and help me heal it, and sit with it and relive the entire experience, because you didn't get to in that moment because you disassociated, which
Yes.
is the problem with most sexual traumas. The gift of disassociation, it's actually
Yeah.
protects you, but what happens to the mind, it actually freezes in the moment and your body becomes completely limp and you are paralyzed. It's a scientific fact that happens during severe sex, especially during sexual trauma. It happened to me. And when I had that realization, I began to stop blaming myself for not defending myself in the moment.
Yeah.
I really wanted to understand, how do I let this go? I'm sick and tired of feeling like this. I'm sick and tired of, and what I had to do is I had to live through the experience again. And most people don't want to do that, right? Tie it back to the addictions, right? What happens? What happens is like, okay, this is coming up. Oh, I'm gonna grab my cigarette. I'm gonna grab my weed. I'm gonna grab my drink. I'm gonna grab like whatever. Grab my
Yeah.
running. Go work out. Like
Yeah.
whatever
Sit
stops you.
yourself in front of the TV, it doesn't matter what you're
TV,
using.
exactly. Like whatever stops you from feeling that experience all the way through. Because a lot of us, what happens is like, oh God, this is stupid. I don't want to think about it. And then we go do
Yes.
something else.
Yes,
What
I'm
is the
done
way
with it. Like, I've been through it. I don't want to go. Like, this happened to me a while back, and like it's just in
and
the
that's
past.
the greatest defense mechanism, because like
Yes.
that happened to me, and that's the false sense of control that we try to give
Yeah.
ourselves. Like, look, I already went through this. I don't want to think about it. It doesn't have power over me. Blah, 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 blah. And the ego just like tries to protect you, when in reality, the true healing happens when you sit alone and you allow yourself to feel that experience again. Cry, feel it all the way through. Feel what it feels like to be taken,
Hmm.
literally taken. Feel what it feels like to be saying no and someone's not hearing you. There's another one. You're not being heard.
Yes.
Feel what it feels like to not feel heard. Feel what it feels like to have your body taken advantage of without your permission. Feel what
Hmm.
it feels like to be trying to do the right thing and say no, and the person ignoring your no, right?
Well,
What
as you're saying that, like, I can. This is very fun and cool because as you're saying that, like, lately I've been realizing that my voice didn't matter, and like I was trying to like understand what the roots of that was, and now that you're saying, like, what how does it feel not to be heard, and I can like there it just went super fast in my mind, but I can see a shift at that moment. In my voice doesn't matter, it's just like it has no power, and I started to gain weight, and I was like bullied at my work. Like, it was like all kinds of weird stuff that were happening because of me shutting myself down.
Yeah. And so what was happening in your reality is the law of attraction was trying to show you, look, you need to practice what it feels like to not feel heard. And when I had to do that, I allow myself to go into my little walk-in closet and I crawl into a ball and I sit up on top of a pillow and I said, "Okay, God, I feel the memory coming. I'm ready to roll with it."
Mm,
And I allow myself to be the little girl that's 1 or 2 or 3 years old, and she's, like, trying to play and trying to say something, and mommy and daddy are too busy, and mommy and daddy have so much shit going on, and mommy and daddy blah, 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 and that little girl is like, "But this," right? And everything I say is wrong. So, like,
mm-hmm.
allowing that little girl inside and to feel heard while experiencing that. It's painful. It's not easy. What I'm talking about is a very logical, very simplistic method, but it's not easy at all. Who wants to
Yeah.
go sit down? Who thinks they have time to go sit down for 30, 40, 50 an hour minutes and allow your emotions to completely overtake you so they can be fully released? Once you fully release them to their maximum capacity and you dive deep into that grief that sits in the pit of your stomach that rots day in and day out, when you allow yourself to cry and like ugly cry and just like barely breathe, you're releasing that memory and you're not allowing to have power over you
Mm,
anymore. And however long that takes, that 30, 40, 50 minutes, hour time frame, I promise you, after that time frame, you're going to get your beautiful, sexy ass off the floor as God's divine child and be like, cool, that doesn't have power over me anymore. And you're going to see in your reality how it's not going to impact you anymore. You're going to see
yeah.
that guy and be like, oh, wow, that guy is super sick.
Mm,
Feel really bad for
yeah.
him instead of being like, what a piece of shit. You see, there's a difference in responding into how we've healed ourselves. And
Yeah.
the best method for healing in general and anything is to allow yourself to feel those emotions authentically,
Yeah.
thoroughly, without medicine, without, some that's why I think that God brought like plant medicines to the world because
Mm.
so dense here on earth, we're so unwilling to believe that all I have to do is feel my emotions, right? Just overcomplicate it, right? I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to go to a counselor, I got to go to rehab for like, however months, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all this earth stuff, dude. When in reality, the best healing I've found in my experience, I've gone through all of these educational systems. I've gone through all of these different methods. I've worked hands-on with these uh, survivors of sexual assault. I've run campaigns at my corporate job. I ran a Red My Lips campaign, which was about speaking up against sexual violence, and I ran it there every single April. And it was my task today. Everybody did wear red because they knew why they were all wearing red. And that triggered conversations about sexual assault. You know,
Mm,
I've lived and done all this stuff. And the best method that I found to help heal my sexual trauma is touching my own body and allowing myself to feel through those experiences that I've kept suppressed for so long because that little girl inside deserves to feel heard. That little girl inside deserves the voice that I've kept suppressed for so long because I was uncomfortable feeling those experiences.
yeah.
It's easier to hate men. It's easier to be like, oh my God, fuck, I'm never talking to him. Like, it's easy to do that. It's easy to avoid, push away.
Yeah.
It's easy. That's not hard. That's like the cop out,
Yeah.
right?
It's so
Um,
easy, and we're just fooling ourselves thinking that we are dealing with it as we're doing those things.
yeah, we do. Um, and again, counseling definitely helps, like having I recommend anybody who's trying to go through sexual trauma that feels overpowered by it to either go to a counselor, or I would recommend more a spiritual life coach to help guide you on that path, because modern psychology is only going to take you so long in explaining what's
Yeah.
going on with your mind. It's not going to get in touch with your soul. It's not going to get in touch with the authentic emotions that you need
Yeah.
to be released. Because once again, you're paying somebody else to tell you what's wrong with you. rather
Yeah.
than us being willing to seek it ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah, sex is a I love talking about sex. And
Yes.
I like, and I, my Instagram, like I love embracing my body because I was shamed for it for so long.
Hmm.
Constant
That's
shame over what I'm
yeah.
wearing. Even when you go to school, girls can't wear spaghetti straps. Why can't girls wear spaghetti straps? Because men in the school sexualize the little girls. That's
Yeah.
why. It makes the adults uncomfortable. It doesn't make the little girl uncomfortable. She's fine wearing her little spaghetti.
Yeah.
She's fine wearing her little tube top and her short
Oh
shorts.
yeah.
Some of us are more comfortable wearing barely any clothes, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't be shamed for that. I think I told you last time. That's why I love wearing crop tops. That's why I
Yes.
wear like short. Like when I teach my group fitness classes, I have my little booty hanging out all the time. I don't think it's
Yeah.
shameful. I worked hard on my little booty and I like working out. And I like
Yeah.
wearing what I'm wearing because I've been shamed for so long. And it's not about shaming the person. It's about what am I triggering in you where you feel the need to comment on what I'm wearing because it makes you uncomfortable. See, that's where we have to get comfortable as mirrors to the collective.
Yes.
We have to get like, I'm fine with being a mirror. I'm fine with making
Yeah.
people uncomfortable. I'm fine walking into to go sit down and have something to eat and have a little crop top on. I don't care. I like it. I
Yeah.
enjoy it. And it's because
Yeah.
I worked hard for my body. I work hard to maintain my sustenance as I elevate on this planet, as I grow and ascend in rebuilding the new earth. Because topics like these are the ones that help rebuild the new earth. That is
Yes.
what's happening, whether people are aware of it or not. Anyone who has come across this particular podcast is definitely meant to some capacity because there is so much sexual trauma, and I believe
Yeah.
every person on this earth has it
Yeah.
to some degree. It's been shamed and minimized for so long that every single human being on this planet has been the survivor of some kind of sexual assault, sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Um, I know for a fact most little girls,
Yeah.
we're always talked about like when we go into puberty, like, oh God, she's getting her boobs. Like, why are we commenting on her getting
Yeah. Gosh, the more we speak, the more example I have that's just popping into my mind, like me starting to have like under my armpit like hair, right? It's
Yeah,
normal. Like, and then my father like putting my arm up in a fucking like gathering of like, I don't know, 50 people, and then like, hey, look at, and it's just like so humiliating.
yeah,
You're like 13, you're like, what the hell, like, you're my father, you're supposed to be like protecting me, not like throwing me to the lions.
yeah.
And it's just like, there's so many example as we speak that are popping into my mind, and I'm like, gosh, like I should just make a list of all of those short
Well,
moments.
I think you bring up another good point too, because you've mentioned your dad a couple times, and as we're continuing to become aware and as we're continuing to evolve, especially men on the planet, um, really embracing the daughter you have, creating
Yeah.
a secure, safe space because she won't want to go seek attention from other males. She'll
Yeah.
know and understand what safety feels like and won't choose to go explore elsewhere. She won't think working in a strip club is love.
Yeah.
She'll have her true, authentic, beautiful perceptions of what healthy male relationships look like.
Yeah.
And as we're like what we're talking about, rebuilding the new earth, what can anybody do to contribute, right? We can heal our own emotional wounds. But if we're a parent,
Yeah.
especially if we're the parent of, like, if we're a man, the parent of a young daughter, the importance of that little girl feeling safe and secure is what the masculine's job is. That is what they do. And a healthy masculine does in fact create that safe space. I have a client, he's remarkable. He's so awesome. He's so authentic in his own way. And he has this 4-year-old little girl, and she lives maybe like a couple 100 miles away from him, so he doesn't get to see her that much. He chose himself by moving and separating out of a relationship he didn't belong in, but he also has a little girl.
Hmm.
And we had a session. We were scheduled for a session, and he messaged me and he said, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be able to make it. My daughter was telling me she wishes I was there for picture day, and I have to make it there." He put it at the top priority to drive a couple 100 miles to go make sure that his 4-year-old daughter knew that he was present for her very first picture day. Now,
Oh,
in the grand scheme of things, the majority people, what do? They're like, "Oh, I can't. I got to work. Sorry, babe." And then what do parents say to justify? "Oh, they're only 4. They won't remember."
yeah,
No. It's not like she'll remember every event, but he's creating a safe, secure environment that a healthy man is going to make sure that I am doing my part, right? I have the support of a healthy man around me as a
yeah,
woman, right? And that's how the masculine and feminine work beautifully together. And I think that more men like that are willing to go to any lengths to show up for their daughters, women like myself that are parents of young men that are willing to heal their masculine wounds while raising masculine, creates a whole other kid, dude. I'm telling,
yes,
it creates a whole, I mean, too. You're raising
yeah,
your kids in this environment, and you're
yeah,
doing everything that you can as well. And this all plays a part in the sexual healing,
yeah.
because my son, we have very open, honest conversations about sex. I'm not going to go into them because he would kill me if I talked about them publicly. But because, he's a Scorpio, he likes to keep things private, and I need to respect that as the parent,
Yes,
right?
yes,
But we do have healthy conversations about specific, very specific things that boys go through
yeah,
naturally, right? And it's my job to not shame it. It's my job to not shy away from it. It's my job to speak up and shed light so that beast that we were talking about earlier
yeah,
doesn't get wrapped up in my son.
yes,
And
yes.
if
It's
if
so
the
important.
child around him, he would know and understand this doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, I do the same with my girls. They're like two of them are like entering this new cycle of their lives where they're gonna have their periods, and like
Yeah.
their body is transforming, and like to be open to those conversation and not to let them be alone in those transformation, and like the relationship you're building with your body as this is happening, you're becoming a woman, you're becoming a sexual being at that moment. And I'm not saying that 10-year-old or 11-year-old should have sex, but they're gonna start being attracted more. The hormones are getting there, and how to deal with that, and how to dress in a way that feels good for them, even if it's like a crop top, and like buying them bras because they feel more comfortable with that, and to support those transformation and to let those door open for conversation. I feel like, because I'm not like, they're not 17, they're not 20 yet, but I feel like this is going to be empowering for them as adult, like as future adult in their sexual being, because it's a part of who we are. We just have to own up to it, assume, and just like stay open as parent. It's so important.
And people aren't probably going to like this part, but the best way to really dive deep truly and authentically in your sacral chakra creativity is to create a period of abstinence for yourself. It's a form of self-love when you're like, look, I'm not going to engage in any kind of sexual activity. I'm going to see what comes up for me during this time, because things will come up during this time, because we don't
Yeah.
know, we numb out with sex too. Uh,
Yes.
And you create that safe environment for yourself, and you'll start to come up with ideas and creative processes that you didn't really think that you had. And
Yeah.
you allow that creativity to embrace yourself, right? Fully and authentically. That's why there's so many right now that are doing the things that you're doing on a podcast, that are doing the things that I'm doing with clients specifically, as the collective grows as a whole, because
Yeah.
we're telling you how it's working and how it's going to work going forward.
Yeah.
And it's really challenging to be a pioneer of this time.
Yeah.
It's like getting on the Mayflower and freaking coming over to land that's never been discovered before, except it's all in the ethers.
Yeah.
It's all in shit you can't see. So we're like on this boat and we're like, yo, this is happening. You might want to try this. And we throw people a life vest, right? And like
Yeah.
all you can do is like continuously try on this spiritual journey to grow and evolve yourself, and
Mhm.
try to help others along the way, but don't sacrifice yourself in the process. So as
Yeah.
we ride on this little boat, this is just one of the lessons that I found to be totally and authentically true. And I would challenge anybody that's listening, and even you yourself, to sit with one experience and allow
Yeah.
yourself to feel it fully and see what happens after that. See how much revelation comes. Give it like a day or two and allow yourself to just feel what it feels like to be released of that.
Yes.
I went through, I had to release so many things. And in that way, when I feel in that heart space and I feel those experiences totally and
Mm.
fully, I gotta get rebalanced. I'm like, whoa, this is what it's like to stand up on two legs without shit controlling me. Holy crap.
Yes.
It's about like, oh my God, I don't know who I like. Before, I had a hard time finding out who I was, who that doesn't
Mm.
hate men. You know,
Right?
that was a huge part of my personality for so long, blaming men, blaming, everything they're doing. It's their fault. They are all perverts. But da, 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 and like this I told myself. And then once that released, it was like, holy shit, that's not real. Okay, humbly, thank you for making me realize that. But also, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Right? And so getting your footing, allowing yourself. So like if people are listening, I just challenge them to kind of find a safe space for yourself, and show yourself the biggest form of self-love you possibly can. And
Yeah.
ask the divine to come to you and say, look, I just heard this podcast with these two chicks, and evidently I got some things going on. And I got this one thing that's bothering me, and I really want to let it go. Why does this keep happening to me? Why does this keep happening over and over? Why am I feeling this over and over and over? And you let yourself sit with that. And let's say you're struggling a little bit. That's why I think plant medicine was created, because God's like, look, it's so dense around here. Have a few mushrooms, dude. Have a few
Yeah.
mushrooms. Sit and vibe out and chill and allow the information to come to you. It's amazing. Like this is a beautiful little game. It's not, I mean, it's kind of a game that we're playing. And once
Yes.
you start to master and understand it, sexual trauma becomes just another thing we get to overcome together as a collective.
Yes. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And I will definitely do that list and go through those experiences for sure, because yeah, because that sacral chakra is so crucial, it's so vital. And as much as I'm super creative, like I'm just wondering like how much creativity can I actually bring into the world if I heal those stuff, knowing that right now I'm bringing so much creativity in the world and within my family and within my relationship.
Oh,
And yeah, like it's gonna just
the ripple effect.
explode.
And
Yeah.
the beautiful thing about being parents is, as we are in this beautiful time and space as pioneers in this time, we are actually healing way like more than any other generation before
Yes.
us, which allows our children to not have those generational traumas on them.
Yes.
And
Agree.
we are actually, I was just shown this the other day. I was shown that, even though we're not riding on private jet planes with my son, I am the best mother I possibly can be, because I'm healing so many things so he doesn't have to deal with it. So he can have emotional intelligence when most kids at his age don't. so he can be intuitively guided, whether he knows it or not. He's
Yeah.
talking to me. He says, "Mom, I lay in bed, and if I got a problem, I just got to lay there and I got to talk myself through it, and I got to see what's the best avenue for me." And I'm like, "What are you, like 100?" I fully credit that to the healing that my soul is doing, because my child
Yes.
is not going to have to feel it or experience it.
Yeah.
And that this is what it means to build the new earth, coming on these
Yes.
beautiful podcasts and spaces that we're creating, in safe spaces we're creating, to communicate in the ways that are truthful and in spiritual truth, and also the ripple effect that that it's creating with young children as parents choose to become aware. Again, we have free will, we get the choice, right? We can choose to do it or not. I choose life today. I choose to feel inspired today. I choose my divine family, my divine counterpart, whoever is out there. I choose all of that, because that
Yeah.
in spiritual truth is what's going on earth right now. And it's an honor. It's an honor to be so blessed in speaking about sex without any fear. I have no fear.
Yes.
When before I had so much fear, and now I'm like, put me on, dude. Let's talk about, you want to talk about deep throat? You want to talk about all this other stuff? I'm down to talk about it all, because it's all beautifully created and masked for our potential. It's beautifully created and masked to show us where our addictions are, or
Yes.
what we might like and dislike, like
Yeah.
allowing
Yeah.
yourself to explore what those things might be. And like that's the healthy part of like healing sexual trauma. You go through all that stuff, you don't find things disgusting anymore. You don't find, like, I have just found a new fascination with knot tying. I forgot what it's called, but I think it's so beautiful watching, like, seeing someone completely surrender to somebody else and get
Hmm.
tied up completely and like in pain, but it's not pain, it's like a form of art. And I've just become
Yeah.
recently fascinated with that, when maybe like 5 years ago I'd have been like, wow, those people are like super crazy.
Twisted.
Right. Right. And so, it's about allowing yourself to explore, like, and I have been like, how come I like that all of a sudden? Like, what's going on there? Am I attracted to the surrender process? To
Yes.
be in control all the time? Or,
Yeah.
like, and so allowing yourself to have those safe conversations, like nothing is nasty. There's no
Yes. I.
nasty, like people are too shamey with it. You're
Yes.
not making it nasty. You're nasty. And then being like, shit, I am nasty. Why am I nasty? Okay. And then being willing to go to the feeling of being nasty. And where does it come from? Probably from some other thing that made you feel nasty, and blah, blah. And around
Yes.
the beautiful healing circle we go, dude.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
love how we can always circle back to the parenting bit, because that's such a big part of healing, that like the next generation, the way they're going to be because of our parenting and because of the whole healing part. Like, I remember before I was a mother, I was healing myself as well, but it took a whole other level when I got pregnant. It was like, okay, now I'm not doing this for myself. Like, this is not just a selfish act because I don't want to feel that anymore, because I want to be through with it and I want to go to something else. It's all because of, like, this little baby is going to come into this world, and I don't want this baby to have all this baggage on themselves. Like, it's just so crazy to go through life with all of that. And I feel like healing our sexual trauma, it's just a part of this, and there should be no shame in as much as there's no shame in talking about your food addiction or your fucking, like,
Right.
whatever. It
I'm
doesn't matter how it shows
politics
up.
is the thing, like
Yes.
that's not easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very interested to talk to people with sex addictions, but then, like, 80-90% of them are like, I'm not saying that out loud. Right?
Right.
I knew somebody that would drive their car to coffee stands where the girls were dressed in lingerie, and he would sit in the car and please himself in secret in his car while
Yes.
watching other women. And
Hmm.
that's hard. Like, are you kidding me? Your addiction drew like literally drove you to go do that.
Yes.
And that's how addictions evolve too. Again, not being talked
Yes.
about. Like, all these freaking crazy things
Yes,
that
addiction shows up in the same way. It's so funny you're saying that because in the podcast, last week's podcast, it was actually a woman that is going through a food addiction, and she was going to a drive-through to get so many like burgers and stuff, and to eat that by herself in the car, and then like just destroy all evidence after. And it's kind of the same thing, you know, addiction will show up in the same way. And so when we see our behavior as an addiction, it doesn't matter how it shows up. We can just like forget about like the makeup it has, you know, it's just addiction. It doesn't matter, you know, it's just like let's just deal with that part of ourselves that is so scared of facing what's real, that we're going to go do those other things that doesn't feel aligned, that doesn't help you at all, but
yeah,
you're still doing them because you're in fear. And we just need to address those things, and the more we address those things, the more evolved we are, and the more the next generation is evolved, and the more we can see this shift happening.
yeah, exactly. And you just touched on like the key piece of all addictions is the dark, right? Like that woman that was
Yes.
eating all these burgers in secret and hiding and destroying all evidence. Like she's the only one that knows, but so does the darkness. So
Yes.
like that's why it's important to talk about whether we want to or not. The moment we say out loud, I have this problem, the universe will conspire to help us overcome it.
Yes.
But the problem is there's so much shame, there's so much guilt, like I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that, I shouldn't, like should, and everyone's shoulding all over themselves instead of having open and honest conversations. But we're not comfortable with it, right? Like another addiction that manifests in real life on social media that everybody else can agree with is everybody loves to take pictures of themselves and like, or take videos of themselves and like think it's like, you know, the most predominant act to do so without a purpose. Like I'm just like, oh, happy Saturday, here's me, you know. Let's say you're going to work out and you want to hold yourself accountable, and you kind of do that as like holding yourself accountable. Okay, that makes sense, right? But most people aren't doing that. Most people are
Yeah.
just like creating videos and like explaining like, oh, thanks so much, and like there's no purpose. It's just them seeking validation and attention, which is another
Yes.
addiction. Seek
Yes.
validation, attention, because they didn't get it from whatever childhood memory. Maybe they were sexually
Exactly.
assaulted too, and it manifests
Yes.
into seeking attention in other ways, in other shapes, and other forms.
Yeah.
Um, it's just incredible,
It
and
is.
sexual trauma manifests in so many ways. Like I found out, I talked on the last podcast about like my alcohol addiction and what I had to overcome.
Yes.
But it wasn't until I understood why I was drinking alcohol, like what was I trying to numb? And it was because I was trying to numb my sexual experiences as a young child.
Yes.
I was trying to numb that. Now that I understand all that, I'm still not willing to drink again. However, is my alcohol addiction still there?
Hmm.
So like I
Oh, that's a
think,
good question.
yeah,
That's a good question.
for me, my sexual trauma is the one that manifested and turned into all these other addictions.
Yes.
And it's not until I was willing to face these traumas in their full authentic light that I began to see everything for what it is. I mean, I even stopped vaping. Nicotine's so hard to quit. It's the hardest. And now I got a tally sheet. I keep track of myself every day now. I'm like, girl, get it, girl, get it. But I think it's because of I have overcome the sexual trauma. So I don't
Yes.
need to soothe myself anymore. That feeling of needing that soothing myself of smoking something isn't there anymore. And it's
Yes.
really fascinating. It's like, wow, people try patches, they try the gum, and all they're doing is just choosing another addiction. They're keeping the nicotine in their body. When if you remove the nicotine, you're going to feel things.
Yes. Oh
and
yeah.
right. And
Oh
instead of
yeah.
allowing yourself to feel those things, we just find other addictions. So It's just crazy how sexual trauma can manifest in so many different ways because of shame, because of
Yes.
silence, because of the guilt.
Yeah.
Um, and as long as we get more comfortable talking about it, it'll continue to either manifest in the reverse or in the proper direction. But
Yeah.
we have to first begin conversations and
I agree.
not be afraid to talk about it in our surroundings, like in our everyday life, being holy and authentic with somebody, like that's hard for people to do too, but
Yeah. That's why we need to create those safe space, where we can actually like support people truly, like
and
to go through that by yourself or like with members of your family that doesn't get it. Like it can be freaking hard, but to be able to reach out to people like you and to be able to talk about that freely without any judgment and with knowing that there's something else underneath. There's going to be something so beautiful that's going to come out of you talking about that instead of you being in fear of talking about that.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's just we need to empower ourselves with our the things we went through. Let's go, let's heal those stuff.
Yeah, and again, it is challenging when you first begin try to manage it. So, you have my link
Oh
to
yeah. Yeah,
Instagram.
you're linked. Your
Yeah.
links are all there in the description below, and of course, I invite people to just reach out to you because you're so like it's just so fun to talk about you about that. Like just even in that hour, like I've realized so many things just
Good.
talking with you like that, and it's so empowering and as I already know that I have all the power, but sometimes, you're going and you're healing that stuff and then
Yeah.
it gets like okay. And then there's another thing that comes up and like so that's what happened for me today. It's just like all right, so that's this part right now. So let's go through it and when I'm done, there's probably going to be another part. And the more I'm healing those parts, the more powerful I become, the more creative I become, and the more like a good parent I become. Like it's just like unraveling in a very positive direction. So just to finish, what would be your advice for people that are now realizing because they never seen that being looked at as a kid was a sexual trauma. So maybe people are just really like shocked right now from hearing all of that. So what would be your advice for our listener that maybe either overwhelmed or I don't know how you guys feel. Just show up in the comment section and tell us. We're gonna be there for you. But what would be your advice for those people?
Um, don't run away.
Hmm.
It's the uncomfortability that you feel, you're meant to feel. Allow yourself to feel it. If you are feeling overwhelmed, to get on your computer or get on a notebook and just start writing. Just start writing about your experience. Feel free to reach out to me. I do free consult calls for 30 minutes. So, I mean, if at any time like you're kind of in a state of emergency, I'm very well versed in sexual trauma scientifically and also in the spiritual world and also on an individual level. So not only have I experienced it, I've also been on the other side and been the person that's helping and assisting and the advocate and the counselor and um, the teacher. I know a lot about sexual trauma and I myself have shied away from it because of the shame and
Mhm.
because it's a hard topic to um, embrace. It's a very and I'm glad you're doing this recording because people can listen in their own comfort of their own home without being
Yeah.
around anybody, without being bothered by people, and whatever emotions come up for you, just write out what's coming up for you and give yourself the space and the time. You're never too busy to do that.
Mm.
Nothing is more important than your journey. And if you're triggered by some of this information, sit with those triggers and believe that you don't have to do this alone. Feel free to reach out to me or Marigold herself.
Yeah.
We're here to support. Like, I've been an advocate for sexual assault since 2010. And that's a lot of years. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like 13 years. Um,
Yes.
so, and it's not that serious, also. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I was gonna say
Yeah,
yes.
like there's all that, but also it's not that serious. Like it already happened. Like
Yes.
everything already happened. And what you're feeling is past emotion that you haven't felt yet. So allowing yourself to embrace that part of you. You're like, okay, I've actually been keeping this quiet to myself forever and ever and ever. And now it's coming up. It's coming up for a reason, and allow that reason to resonate with you.
Yeah. Sometimes the before leaping is scarier than the actual leap.
Yes, it is scarier because once you step into it, then you're already there. But the
Yes.
before step before the step, that's the hard part.
Yes,
That's where
that's the
the
hard
mind's
part.
like, oh my God, it's a blah, 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 and like, the inner critic plays all these games with you, and you're like, oh my God.
So true. All right, thank you so much, Alicia. That was so like full of insights, and I feel already empowered by
Good.
just this conversation. So thank you so much, and hopefully it helped a lot of people that are watching and are listening to this as well. I'm sure it did.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.